Hi everyone, it's Andrea over at Sewspire.com. Welcome to our Commuter Tote series here at Sewspire for the month of September. Today we are going to be making a smaller version of my Commuter Tote. I will link to that original tutorial that has been super popular down in the notes. So if you're interested in making the original, which is much larger and has 3 interior compartments, you can go ahead and do that as well, referencing that step-by-step tutorial. This sweet little bag here, again, is smaller and it has a flap closure on the front. There are 2 wide exterior pockets. Then inside are 2 compartments, which each have 3 slip pockets. One of them has a swivel fob, and then along the back we also have 2 more wide slip pockets. So in total you have 10 pockets and 2 interior compartments. It's a fabulous design, and I'm going to show you in this video today step by step how to sew it. I'm going to give you all the pattern measurements as we go. As always, I also have a 1-page PDF document which I call a design board, which includes all of the pattern measurements, the supply list, some photos of the project, the finished measurements, as well as a hyperlink to this very tutorial so that you can reference that 1-page document in the future when you're looking for some sewing inspiration. If you are interested in purchasing the design board, you'll find that in my Etsy pattern shop, which is also linked down in the notes. So shall we get started? Okay, so here is a look at the exterior panel. There will be 2 of those, and I have pre-crafted one of those. And I'm going to give you a little overview here. The 2-inch webbed strap runs from the base of that exterior panel around and then fashions the handle. You have a lot of flexibility on the length of the handle, so increase the measurement on your webbing if you like your handle drop a little longer, or decrease it if you like that a little shorter. The webbing is underneath of the pockets there, and then there are 2 wide slip pockets on the front of this panel for a total of 4 pockets on the exterior. So we are going to begin with a rectangle which measures 18 inches across by 15 inches tall. And we are going to notch out 3 by 3 inch corners from the left and right hand bottom corners, and that will give the bag its depth when we fashion the flat corners. Now for the webbing here, each of my straps measures 57 inches long. That should be enough webbing for you, even if you like your straps long. If you like them on the short side, you could get away with less webbing, but if you are shopping for this project, you'll need 2 cuts of 2-inch wide webbing that are 57 inches in length. And so I want to make sure that my handles are the same length on both of these panels. So I'm going to begin by positioning one end of that webbing 1 inch in. So I'm going to position one end of the webbing 1 inch in from that bottom corner there. And then I'm going to form a U And I will need to bring over my finished panel and make sure that I am getting my straps the same length, because I did trim a little bit off of this because I do like a little bit snug handle so that the bag stays on my shoulder. So I'm just going to position this finished one right on top of there and make sure that my handles are the same length. And I actually have the piece of material that I cut off of that first piece of webbing, so I'm going to use that to double check the length on this. So in case you're curious, I cut off about 7 inches off of that. So in the end, if you like the look of my bag, you'll need 2 50-inch cuts of the 2-inch wide webbing. So now that I'm confident that the handles will be the same length, I'm going to position the second side of the handle 1 inch from that bottom corner there. And then I want to pin this webbing in place. And then from the top, I'm going to measure down 5 inches and mark horizontally with another pin. And then I want to stitch up one side of that strap over at the pin and down the other side so that this strap is firmly attached to this exterior panel. I don't want to stitch up here above the pocket yet because this is going to be a drop-in lining, and if I attach that handle now, I won't be able to finish the bag nicely. So I have securely attached both handles to this exterior panel. Now I want to bring over my pocket panels. I am using the same exterior fabric for the front of that pocket and then a complementary yellow for the lining. And these pocket panels are 9 inches tall by 18 inches across, and you will have an exterior and a lining for each of those, and there will be a pocket on the front and the back of this bag, so you'll need a pocket panel for each of your exterior panels. And you will take the top and the bottom edge of those pocket panels and press them over 1 inch, and then you can position that exterior pocket panel on top of the pocket lining. And I like to let about 1/4 inch of that lining peep out over the top of that pocket, and then I stitch across there using a very narrow seam allowance, and then I bump down about 1/4 inch and add a second row so that my pocket is nicely finished. And then the bottom of the pocket is positioned 1 inch up from the exterior of the side panel, and you want to make sure that you have that pocket nice and level. That is approximately 3.5 inches from the top. And once you're satisfied with the pocket placement, you can secure that with a couple of pins, and then you are going to be stitching across the base of the pocket and then down the center of the pocket to divide that. I like to add an additional row of stitching to the left and the right of that center stitch line. Okay, so now I have my pocket attached at the base and 3 rows of stitching up the center there. So I have a nice 2-way divided pocket on the front and the rear of this bag. So I want to bring back over the first panel that I pre-crafted, and I'm going to position that right sides facing on top of the panel that we just crafted together. And I want to do my best to align those pocket panels. I like for sure the top of those pocket panels to be aligned. Ideally both the top and the bottom are going to be aligned, but it's not always a perfect alignment. So when I have to choose, I prioritize the top of the pocket because that is much more visible to the eye. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it to you. The body panels are backed with a fusible fleece, and that is a heavy weight, so it will give this bag lots of body. And so now that I have the sides aligned, I want to align my straps at the base. And then using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to stitch down the right and the left hand sides and across the base. I am not stitching the corner at this time. Then after you have stitched the right, the left hand side, and across the base, go in and peel back those layers and just verify that you have captured the lining of the pocket front, and the body panels in those side seams. If anything looks close, go back in and touch that up. But if you're satisfied with the seams, then you can reach inside and flatten out those corners. You're going to be aligning the side seam with the base seam, and using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, you're going to stitch across there to give the bag its depth. And then go ahead and line up those sides and make sure that you have the same depth on both corners. And then before you turn this right side out, trim back that top side about 3 inches. We just want to trim that up to 1/4 inch, and this is just so when we turn that top edge over, we don't have a lot of excess bulk there at the side seam. And then you can go ahead and turn the exterior right sides out. And you can see the straps span the base of the bag, which is very attractive. And then they come out from underneath of those pockets. So we're going to take the top edge of this bag and we're going to turn that in about 1 inch, and you can go ahead and clip that in place. I like to begin at those side seams, and then I come around to the front at center, put another clip in place, and then along the rear at center. And then I come in at the quarter marks, which in this case, we're still going to let those handles fall towards the front. Eventually, we will secure those in that top seam, but not quite yet. So you can go ahead and clip at the quarter marks. Super cute. What a fun combination. Okay, so the exterior is all prepped. We're going to set that aside, and we're going to begin crafting the interior compartments. So I have one of those pre-made. For the interior, I am using that coordinating yellow. It's a quilt weight cotton, and I have backed that with a lightweight fusible interfacing Pellon 808, 809 is a great choice for that. And this interior compartment is smaller. There'll be 2 of those, and they have 3 slip pockets on the inside. I'm going to walk you step by step through that process. On this second panel, we are also going to install a little swivel key fob in the pocket. So the interior body panels measure 15 inches across by 15 inches tall. There are 2 of those, and they are backed with the lightweight fusible interfacing. And I have notched a 1.5 inch corner out of the bottom right and left hand corners. So we are just going to be working with one of these panels at the moment. And we're going to begin by crafting the key fob, which is 3 inches wide by 7 inches long. You're going to fold that in half and press it, and then bring those outer edges inward to meet on that center press line, and fold that over and press again. You can adjust the width and your press lines to get a strap that will fit inside of your hardware. And mine is a 1/2 inch swivel fob. So I did get creative with the pressing there so that I could get the proper width on this. So now I am going to stitch down that open edge and then across the remaining folded edge. And that gives me a nice sturdy strap, which I will thread onto my fob there. And I'm going to line up those raw edges and just run a row of stitching across there to hold it even. And then the interior pockets are 15 inches across by 10 inches tall. There are 2 of those, 1 for each panel. You're going to press over the 15-inch top and bottom 1/2 inch, then fold that in half and press, and then you can press in division lines there. I just folded it in thirds, and those are the lines that I'm going to stitch on, so I have a 3-way divided pocket. So before I top stitch across that edge, I want to tuck my key fob in there, and you can position that anywhere you like on that pocket lip. And then I'm going to run 2 rows of stitching right across the top of that pocket to finish that. Okay, and now I have a nicely finished pocket with a swivel fob. So I'm going to position that pocket 4 inches up from the outer edge here of my interior panel. So that's going to be 4 inches up from what will ultimately be the base. You have a lot of freedom here. You can go closer to the base if you want, because these are shallow pockets. I want them closer to the top. My only caution would be don't get within 2 inches of the top. Okay, so make sure your pocket is nice and level, and then you can run a row of stitching across the base and then put in your vertical pocket dividers. Okay, I have my 3-way divided pocket attached. Ultimately, that key fob will lay flat on that pocket, and I can tuck the keys inside the pocket or let them hang outside of the pocket. So now I want to bring back over the opposite interior body panel, and remember you're going to have 2 of these interior compartments in this bag, so you're going to need to duplicate this effort. And I'm going to position that right sides facing on top of my pocket panel, and I will be using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance for the interior compartments to stitch the sides and across the base. I will not be stitching the corners yet. And And then once you have your sides and the base stitched, go ahead and just check those seams and make sure that you did in fact capture all of the layers. And then you can reach inside and fashion the depth just as we did before. You are aligning the side seam with the base seam and stitching across there using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then once you have those corners fashioned, then you can take this top edge and fold that over about an inch. I find with this lightweight fusible that you don't have to pin or clip that. You could just press that with your fingers. And you will need 2 of those interior compartments. And what you're going to want to do is position those on top of each other with the pocket panels facing, and you are going to line up that top edge and those side seams like this here. And what you will want to do is measure in 2 inches from each side, and you are going to be stitching from finger to finger there. So you're going to leave 2 inches of each side open. And you are only stitching those interior walls. So hopefully you can see that there. I just stitched right across that top edge there, and I left 2 inches on each end there. Now I want to bring back over my exterior, and I want to fit this interior inside of there. So I'm going to tuck that in. Okay, and I want to center this seam here with those outer seams on the exterior. And I'm going to use these exterior clips here to hold the front of that in place, and then same for the back. I don't want this shifting while I position those sides. Okay, then I can line up the sides here, and you're going to have your side seam from the exterior and then your side seam from each interior compartment misaligned. There's anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to an inch in between those seams there. They do not have to be aligned. In fact, there will be no way for you to make them aligned. And then you should strive to have where those 2 panels come together end up right on that exterior side seam. And you still have a little opening there on each end of that interior, and that is what allows you the flexibility to align these interior compartments nicely with the exterior, which is a little larger. All right, and after you have clipped well, you should have your exterior meeting up with the interior. And then the next thing we're going to do is craft a flap closure, which will come over these compartments and secure the bag on the front. Okay, the flap closure from this is crafted from 1 piece of material that's 6 inches wide by 15 inches long, and I'm going to fold that in half and press, and that is backed with a piece of the fusible fleece as well. And what I want to do is stitch down those long edges and across that fold. I'm going to leave the short edge open to turn, and I'll be using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I have stitched the long edges and across the base. Now I want to trim this up to a 1/4 inch. I did angle the corner just a smidge there so it will turn nice for me. Then I'm going to turn that right side out, poke out those corners and give it a good press. And then after you have pressed, go ahead and top stitch around all the finished edges using a 1/4 inch. And for this closure, I am going to be using a magnetic snap. You could use a snap with prongs, you could use a twist lock, you could use hook and loop tape. You have a lot of options there. So to install my magnetic snap, I'm going to position one of those face plates on there at center, about an inch up from the bottom there, and I'm going to mark my little cut lines, and then I just reach inside and only through that one layer do I make small slits inside of this. And then I install the lightest portion of that press lock, which is generally the male portion, and you just fit the little prongs right through those slits, and then position that back plate on there, and then press the prongs inward, and then give your flap a good press. And so I have the male portion of the magnetic snap on the flap. Okay, now you'll have to choose which side is the front and which is the back of your bag, and you might want to position the flap on there and see if you have an actual preference. They both look good to me, so I think I'll make this the front of the bag. So the flap is going to get positioned on the back of the bag in between that interior layer and that exterior, and you're going to be tucking about 2 inches of that flap in between those layers, and you want it centered. And you may need to switch to pins for this portion. Make sure the flap is nice and level. And then we're going to work on the front here to determine where we need to install the female portion of this magnetic snap. And I'm coming in right above that pocket, so that makes that nice and easy for me. So I want to by my remaining face plate there, position that on that exterior fabric, mark where those cut lines are, and I just use the seam ripper and very carefully cut that fabric just enough that I can slip those prongs inside of there. And so the female portion of the magnetic snap is going on the front right above that pocket. And I'll get those prongs out the back side there and put on that face plate and fold those prongs inward on top of each other. And then I'll realign the fabric at the top edge there. And again, probably going to have to switch to pins versus clips along the front here so that nothing is in the way of the test fit. Oh, it's so darling. I really love this bag. Cutie, cutie, cute. Okay, so now what we need to do is stitch around the front of the bag, and we're going to be stitching from the side seam to the side seam of the exterior. Then we're going to stitch around the back of the bag from the side seam to the side seam, And then we're going to come in and touch up along these top edges of that center seam. But you want to do this last. And I want to mention to you, still leave these handles falling down at this point. After we get the compartment secured, then we'll raise those up and stitch them in place. Okay, so I have stitched around the front as far as I could and around the back as far as I could. Now I'm going to go in and using a different angle and folding the fabric over where needed and touch up all of those top intersections so that I don't have any holes in the bag top there, and everything looks nice and finished. And this is very easy to do just by folding the fabric and coming in at a different angle. And now that I have the exterior completely attached, I'm going to come in and join up that interior top edge where I stopped to the exterior. And then now that you have that top edge secure, you can really fit your interior inside the bag, and there is plenty of excess on those interior compartments. You can push those into the exterior interfacing and they will grip, and into the base because those are free floating at the base. And that extra material down towards the bottom will give you additional cargo space in case you have more contents in one compartment than the other. So here's what that looks like. It's really darling. Now we want to attach these handles at the top, otherwise they are not going to be secure enough when this bag is fully loaded. So you want to lay the bag flat and then close up that flap closure, get that nice and even, and then figure out where you need your handles positioned here, and then put pins in those so you can keep them nice and straight. And you're going to be stitching right across that webbing, hopefully even with the top stitching that you have put in place there already. You can add an additional row of top stitching right below that across the webbing if you think you might be carrying a heavy load. And then one at a time, put those handles back up on the machine deck and secure them. Oh, absolutely darling. What a fun bag. So we have 2 pockets on the front, 2 pockets on the back. Then we have the flap closure here and a 2-way divided interior which has 3 slip pockets on each side. So we have a total of 10 pockets in this fabulous small commuter tote. I do believe I could fit my laptop inside of this. Of course, an e-reader would fit just fine. Phone, charger cords, book, journal, pens, keys, everything you would need to get to and fro. So beautiful, beautiful bag. Thank you so much for sewing with me. Before we say goodbye, I want to give you some measurements on this. I'm coming in at 11 inches tall. Across the top here, we're at 14 inches. Across the base, 11 inches. And then the depth on this bag is a little less than 6 inches, maybe 5 3/4 there, 5 1/2. So it really is a fabulous size bag, perfect for everyday use. Voila, that turned out so cute. That was a lot of fun to sew. I absolutely love this combo. Thank you so much for sewing with me today. I can hardly wait to see your small commuter totes on the Sewspire Facebook group page. If you're not yet a member of that group, I'll put a link down in the show notes for you. Please join us over there. It's a wonderful community and it's fun to see how everyone is using the content I create here at Sewspire. Don't forget, if you'd like, I have a one-page PDF document called a design sheet for this project, and that includes all the pattern measurements, the supply list, the finished measurements, as well as a link to this very video tutorial and some photos of the project. The design boards are great because you can save those, collect those, and use them for future inspiration. Then everything that you need to get started is on a one-page document. So if you're interested in supporting the channel, I'll put the link to my Etsy pattern shop down in the notes and you can check that out as well. So I will be back next week. We are going to be exploring the Commuter Tote all month. So please join me next Friday at noon for another inspired sewing tutorial. Until then, as always, please know the creative genius in me will be celebrating the creative genius in you. I hope you all have a beautiful week. Thank you so much for sewing with me.